Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Stefanucci, and I'm an administrative law judge with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. I will be presiding at today's public comment hearing to receive comments on the draft Disadvantaged Communities criteria. On behalf of DEC and NYSERDA, I would like to thank you for joining us this afternoon and for participating in this important process. The DEC, in partnership with NYSERDA, is holding 11 public comment hearings across the state to receive comment on the draft criteria and to help guide the implementation of the state's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. New York's Climate Justice Working Group, which includes representatives from environmental groups across the state and representatives of involved agencies, voted to release the draft criteria for public review. The public comment period commenced in March and will end on July 7th, 2022. The draft criteria may be found at climate.ny.gov. The criteria are based on geographic, public health, environmental hazard, and socioeconomic factors. In a moment, Alana Kettletucky, the director of DEC's Office of Environmental Justice, will provide a brief overview of the work done to the draft criteria. This public comment hearing is being held through the WebEx platform. Notice of this hearing was published in the Environmental Notice Bulletin on May 4th, 2022. Assisting with the hearing today are members of the DEC Office of Communications Services. People are attending today's hearing over the internet or by phone. In either case, you should have audio input from only one device. Otherwise, you may experience problems with feedback. Everyone has been muted upon entry. If you experience any technical issues, please call 518-402-8044 for assistance. The purpose of today's hearing is to allow members of the public to comment on the draft Disadvantaged Communities criteria. This is not a question and answer session. Please note that written comments may be submitted until July 7th, 2022. Written comments are given the same weight as oral comments. Comments submitted by email must be received by the department by 5 p.m. on July 7, 2022, and comments submitted by mail must be postmarked by July 7, 2022. The email address for the submission of comments is daccomments@dec.ny.gov. That's DACCOMMENTS at dec.ny.gov. The mailing address is Draft DAC Comments, New York State DEC, Attention, Office of Environmental Justice, 625 Broadway, 14th floor, Albany, New York, 12233. Anyone who wished to speak today was asked to pre-register. We will call registered speakers first. As we have done at each of these public hearings, we are going to limit speakers to 2 minutes. Please be respectful of that time limit. For those attending over the internet, there will be a 2-minute timer on the screen to help you keep track of your time. Note that closed captioning is available if you have joined via the internet. You will see an option to use this service on the lower left side of the WebEx page you are viewing now. Please click on the CC symbol for closed captioning. Again, if you are having any technical issues, you may call now at 518-402-8044. Before we begin the public comment, Director Alana Kettletucky would like to give a brief presentation. Director?
Thank you, Judge. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alana Kettletucky, and I am the Director for the Office of Environmental Justice at the Department of Environmental Conservation. I'm also the chair of the state's Climate Justice Working Group. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon for this public hearing on the Disadvantaged Communities criteria. The Climate Act is the nation's most ambitious climate change-related legislation. Its goal is to reduce New York's greenhouse gas emissions from all human activities by 100% over 1990 levels by the year 2050, with an incremental target of at least 40% reduction in greenhouse gases by the year 2030. At least 85% of the reductions by 2050 must come from preventing the release of greenhouse gases. Implementing the Climate Act will create opportunities to build a better future. To ensure this work also advances climate justice, the Climate Act mandates that at least 35 to 40% of the benefits of New York's spending on clean energy accrue in disadvantaged communities. State agencies are also required to prioritize greenhouse gas emissions and co-pollutant reductions in disadvantaged communities. This includes the DEC in the drafting of regulations to meet greenhouse gas emission limits that are required by the Climate Act. The identification and prioritization of disadvantaged communities and accounting for the benefits of cutting pollution and improving resilience is what makes our Climate Act a transformative law. To identify disadvantaged communities in New York, the Climate Justice Working Group was guided by the language of the Climate Act in identifying disproportionately burdened communities. They voted to include 45 indicators using data on environmental hazards, climate change risk, public health issues, geography, and socioeconomic factors like race, income, education levels, unemployment rates, and housing conditions. Additionally, the draft disadvantaged communities designations are reflective of the working group, their lived experiences, and the lived experiences of residents of these historically overburdened and underfunded communities. Each census tract is scored based on a relative burden, risk, vulnerability, or sensitivity. Specifically, the percentile ranks of the indicators for each census tract are combined to produce a value that measures the census tract's relative level of environmental burdens and climate change risks, as well as population characteristics and health vulnerabilities relative to other tracts. Tracts with the highest scores relative to other tracts in the state or in their region were identified as disadvantaged communities. The working group also voted to include low-income households with incomes at 60% of the state median income as disadvantaged for the purposes of benefits and investments. Based on the criteria, 36% of households in the capital region fall into the disadvantaged communities criteria, with 20% of these households in geographic disadvantaged communities. In the North Country, 44% of households in the region are in the expanded disadvantaged communities criteria, with 16% located in the geographic disadvantaged communities. Once again, thank you everyone for coming to this hearing today. We look forward to hearing your comments on the disadvantaged communities criteria, and we hope that you will also submit comments by July 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. We will now take public comments. For internet participants, when we call your name to speak, your line will be unmuted. If you are participating by phone, we will ask you to press *3 to raise your hand so that we may unmute your line. Please do not press *3 until we have called your name. Please begin with your name and address, and if you are speaking on behalf of someone or some group, identify who it is that you are representing. Please speak loudly, slowly, and clearly so that our court reporter can properly record your comments. Our first speaker today is Assemblyman Robert Smullen. Assemblyman Robert Smullen. Can we unmute Assemblyman Smullen's line, please?
So yes, we did request unmute, and the Assemblyman must say there he is.
Okay,
unmuted.
thank you. Assemblyman?
Great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to comment in this public forum. One of the big things that I'm concerned with is rural equity for the citizens of the 118th Assembly District. It's a 5-county area that's Fulton, Upper Herkimer, Hamilton County, 6 towns in Oneida, 9 towns in St. Lawrence County. And there's some serious issues that I want to bring up having to do with the draft definition to make sure that it fits all of the citizens of all the different diverse geographic areas of the state. One of the things that I wanted to bring out directly is relative demographic characteristics. So for instance, in the area that I represent, it's about 97% majority white population. So seemingly, one of the characteristics that is being brought out is race. And I want to make sure that it's factored in that it's more an economic metrics that should be the prime driver of the definition of a disadvantaged community from an environmental justice perspective. And the reason that is that for about 40 years, we've been deindustrializing a lot of the capital region, the North Country, and the Mohawk Valley that I represent. Many legacy industries have been left with a lot of cleanup costs that are associated with them, which have subsequently been dragging down the area economy over time. And I wanted to make sure that economic metrics are the prime driver of this. To me, it doesn't matter, what your demographic characteristics are so much as what your economic prospects are. For instance, the factors that I think are really important in factoring in is the percentage of the people on free and reduced school lunch prices. What is the actual median income? And I'm heartened to know and to see that that's one of the main things, because it's a relative regional proposition when it comes to median income. One of the things that I haven't heard a lot about is the percentage of the population that's on public assistance, various programs, whether it's SNAP or welfare benefits that help them in times of need. Another one is the percentage of the population on Medicaid. If there's a high percentage of the people that are on Medicaid, it means that the economics aren't as good as they could be in many areas. There's also some physical characteristics having to do with brownfields and with Superfund sites. And in many of the legacy industrial areas, they're very unattractive from a perspective of regulatory uncertainty, i.e. companies aren't going to come in and invest there if they know that there are potential environmental hazards that are beneath the surface. And I think,
Assemblyman, your 2 minutes is up. Can you please wrap up your comments?
I certainly can. And I think it's very appropriate that I, as a sitting assembly person, have more than 2 minutes. I know you have a busy day today, but I've got a lot to say on behalf of the 130,000 people of my district.
My apologies. We tried to keep the time limit the same for everyone, and I would encourage you to submit comments in writing as well.
I see no other participants in the waiting room, but anyway, I will wrap up. I do appreciate it, and I want to be respectful. But I want to make sure that regulatory certainty is part of this, because that's the key thing in the economic development world, to encourage redevelopment. And just a few examples as I do wrap up. Right now, the U.S. EPA is cleaning up the Charlestown Mall, which is a part in Herkimer County. There are numerous Superfund sites in Gloversville. There are numerous brownfield sites in Herkimer. And there are many mining sites that were all around the Adirondacks, which at one point were very valuable, but now are an environmental legacy that needs to be cleaned up. So as we go about this definition, and I'll also make sure that I tune in for the Mohawk Valley's effort at this, is to make sure that it's heard loud and clear that there are people, there are places, there are 46 towns, 13 villages, and 2 small cities in my district that need their share of consideration in the economic disadvantage criteria to clean up the legacy of the past so they can move forward smartly into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Our next speaker is Assemblyman Matthew Simpson. Has Assemblyman Simpson's line been unmuted?
I am working on that. I'm not seeing him on the list right at this moment.
Assemblyman Simpson, if you called in today, if you press *3, we can unmute your line.
If he was on earlier, he may have gotten called away.
Okay. You know what? We'll go to our next speaker and then we'll try and catch him again later. Our third registered speaker is Tom Mcfeeters. Tom Mcfeeters. Mr. Mcfeeters, if you're participating today by phone and you press *3, we can unmute your line. Next up, we have Supervisor Gregory Young. Supervisor Gregory Young. Supervisor, if you're participating today by phone, you can press *3 and we can unmute your line so you can make your public comment. Okay, now our next registered speaker is William Donahue. William Donahue. Mr. Donahue, if you're participating today by phone, you can press *3 and we'll unmute your line. Okay, our next registered speaker is Tor Shakurjian. Mr. Shakurjian, we can unmute your line and you can make your comment.
Thank you for asking, but I do not have a comment as of yet. I appreciate it. I'll stay on.
Okay, thank you. And our next registered speaker is May Poon. Is May Poon with us today? Ms. Poon, if you're participating today by phone and you'd like to make a comment, please press *3 and we can unmute your line.
I do see a hand raised, or I did. There's a call-in user. To the call-in user that had raised your hand, if that was you, could you please press *3 again?
Okay. I have made the request on mute. There you go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, you may go ahead and make
good
your
afternoon.
comments.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is May Poon. Speaking on behalf of Con Edison in Orange and Rockland. We have served the New York metro region for almost 200 years. We've been providing electricity, gas, and steam to 5 million customers. And we are committed to investing, building, and operating the most reliable, resilient, innovative energy infrastructure, advancing electrification of heating and transportation, and also transitioning away from fossil fuels to a net zero economy. We support the achievement of CLCPA goals, and our clean energy commitment is our pledge to lead on to delivering the clean energy future. Our clean energy commitments incorporate considerations of disadvantaged communities. For example, we have planned infrastructure upgrades to ensure equitable clean energy transition, such as the Reliable Clean City projects, which will improve air quality in disadvantaged communities suffering from peaker plant pollution. And we also increase reliability with an undergrounding program that includes the disadvantaged criteria when we're identifying overhead lines to the underground. With increased availability of energy efficiency and electrification programs in disadvantaged communities as well. We also offer bill discounts to our most vulnerable customers. Since serving the disadvantaged communities is the most important aspect of achieving Con Edison's clean energy commitment, we strongly support climate justice working groups finalizing the definitions of the criteria so we can apply them to our clean energy plans immediately. We will continue to review our clean energy commitment informed by the final scoping plan and the disadvantaged community criteria to help achieve the state's goal. And finally, we have formed an environmental justice working group internally to accelerate the company's cross-departmental efforts and investment to enable an equitable clean energy transition. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, this is a court reporter. Can I please get the spelling of your first and last name?
This is Mei Poon, M-E-I, and last name is P-O-N.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Poon. Now we will hear from anyone else who would like to comment tonight. If you joined us by internet, you may press the hand symbol next to your name or at the bottom of the screen. And if you joined by phone, you can press *3 to raise your hand. Do we have anybody who was not registered who would like to make a public comment? Again, you can raise your hand. I think I see Carolyn Rial. Go ahead, Ms. Rial. Your line has been unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Caroline Reel, and I represent New Hartford, District 15, as an Oneida County legislator. And first of all, thank you for all the amazing and important work that you do on this issue. I'd like to sort of echo the sentiments and the comments of Robert Smullen in speaking about Charlestown, that is in Oneida County, and I just agree with him in the sense of looking at this equation and making sure that we factor in the inequities financially in our communities as we move forward with this project. And I'm looking forward to seeing what New York can accomplish. And we really have to be a leader that everyone else in this country can look to when it comes to this issue. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, I see a raised hand for Horton. Can we unmute the line for Horton?
I have made the request and he just has to accept that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maria. Mr. Horton, if you'd like to make a comment, we see that your hand is raised. You can accept the request to be unmuted, and then you can make your comment. If you no longer wish to make a comment, you can lower your raised hand. Your line has been unmuted. You can go ahead and make your comment.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. Yeah, my name is Scott Horton, and I'm the supervisor of the town of Caroga. We're a small community in Fulton County. We have 7 lakes, recreational lakes in my small town, and the environment is extremely important to us. That's how we attract people here: the clean lakes, clean water, the beautiful air, the night sky. So I certainly applaud the effort on DEC to take this initiative with the broader aspect of looking at our environment and how we can go forward. We are a small community. We only have 1,200 people. Economic development is very, very limited because we can only basically do recreational activities. We do have some challenges in our community, and I think that providing resources, I heard Assemblyman Smullen, he represents our district, the 118th, talk about using the proper metrics when you look at communities. So we have many diverse communities in this great state, and we have some that are not so diverse. We're diverse in a different way. They're hardworking people, and they're just are looking for a break. So I would hope that the metrics that you use and the support that you can give to these small communities will be looked at comprehensively,
Thank you for your comments, Supervisor. Is there anyone else present today that would like to make a comment? If you're participating by internet, you can raise your hand. If you're participating by phone, you can press *3. I see Supervisor Gregory Young. Supervisor, your line has been unmuted.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'd like to echo the comments of my fellow officials representing Fulton County, Supervisor Horton and Assemblyman Smolin. Our area is one that is very attractive to many people because of the rich environment that it offers. And particularly in Gloversville, which I have the pleasure of representing, we also have a number of environmental challenges from the legacy of the tanning industry, and are underway working with DEC and the EPA to address brownfields. And so paying attention to climate is certainly very important. And I know several Gloversville census tracts were designated as disadvantaged communities as part of this process. This is a very valuable thing. But one thing I did want to point out is that Fulton County overall is a very high poverty area. So in transitioning to more green forms of energy, the cost of doing so for many people who are just getting by is going to be very expensive. So I would encourage the committee to be mindful of that and to encourage opportunities to help people who want to upgrade their home heating systems, for example, but don't have the means to do so, to be able to find some support from the state in that process. I think that'd be very valuable for these and all disadvantaged communities throughout the state. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Supervisor. I see we have a raised hand for Tom Mcfeeters. Tom Mcfeeters? Can we unmute Mr. Mcfeeters' line? Your line has been unmuted. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Great, thank you very much. I am a resident of the south end of Albany, and this area has been declared a disadvantaged community, and before that it was declared a environmental justice community by the DEC and so on. This is our community is one that starts from a very low bar in terms of climate change, in that it has already been impacted for years and years, for decades, by heavy truck traffic serving the Port of Albany and the surrounding commercial areas, to the point where we have documented very high levels of asthma and other respiratory diseases, and actually many diseases. It is also an area that has been impacted by redlining and other aspects of racial injustice, again, going back decades and decades, so that we start from a place where it's not just what's happening with climate change, but what has already happened to this community. When I look at the map of what areas have been declared disadvantaged communities. There are certainly many in the state, but I think that you need to take into consideration the impacts that have already happened on communities like this, and make sure that the resources that are going to be available are available to go back and address some of the disinvestment and also the health impacts of the people who live here. It's not just starting from now for climate change. It is starting from decades and decades ago. I know that there's only, as I understand it, there's only one designation of disadvantaged communities. But frankly, some communities are more disadvantaged than others. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Mcfeeters. I see we have a raised hand from Matilda Larson. Matilda Larson. Your line has been unmuted.
I'm an employee with the St. Lawrence County Planning Office, and we provide staff support to a variety of advisory boards, including the Fair Housing Task Force, Environmental Management Council, and County Planning Board. A suggested criteria that I would ask the committee to consider, in addition to looking at race by census tract, would be to examine places where there are higher concentrations of poverty as well as persons who are disabled. And you can rely on American Community Survey from 2016 to 2020 by census tract. And that would just be a suggestion that I'd like to share with you for your consideration, is to examine people living in poverty who are disabled, because as others have indicated, while portions of the North Country may not be racially diverse, there are some inequities that should be taken into account when it comes to household income as well as physical disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Larson. At this time, I would ask if there's anyone else who would like to make a comment. You can raise your hand, or if you're a call-in user, you can press *3 and we'll unmute your line and you can make a comment. At this time, I don't see any additional raised hands. So I just want to let you know that there will be an additional 3 opportunities to provide public comment on the draft disadvantaged communities criteria. The next one is scheduled for Thursday, June 23rd at 6 p.m. in Western New York at the Push Buffalo School 77, located at 429 Plymouth Avenue in Buffalo, New York. Then after that, there'll be 2 additional opportunities for you to make public comment. One will be the Hudson Valley virtual hearing, and that public comment hearing will be conducted on the WebEx platform. The date for that is Wednesday, June 29th at noon. And the final hearing will be the Western New York hearing, and that also will be on the WebEx platform. And the date for that will be Thursday, June 30th at noon. Details for how to attend these public comment hearings can be found on climate.ny.gov, and that's climate.ny.gov. And that concludes this afternoon's hearing. I want to thank you again for your participation, and I want to wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you. We can go off the record.
Okay, we are off the record.